Welcome to chapel worship this day from the Miners Chapel at Phillips Theological Seminary. We especially greet those who are new to our community and our Doctor of Ministry students meeting as part of their coursework. I'm Kurt Gortney, Senior Director of Communications at Phillips and a 1999 alum. We are honored to have our chapel homily brought to us by the Reverend Dr. Stephanie Crumpton. Dr. Crumpton is the Associate Professor of Practical Theology at McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago. This is her second time, and I personally hope not her last, to grace our community with her powerful and prophetic voice. You can see her first sermon from Phillips on our YouTube channel or our website. Before joining McCormick's faculty, Dr. Crumpton was Assistant Professor of Practical Theology at Lancaster Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. Prior to that, she served as Professor of Pastoral Care and Counseling at Hood Theological Seminary. She's an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, and we are so fortunate that she has given us all the gifts of her wisdom and her time. As we begin our service, will you please join with me in our call to worship, written by a dear friend and alum of Phillips and one of my favorite seminary teachers, the Reverend Leslie Penrose. We come, God of the journey, a people from different places, different histories, different lifestyles. We come hoping to find companionship for the journey, solidarity for the struggle. We gather, God of hospitality, around your welcome table, a table not yet round, but rounding. We gather seeking to become a round-table people, welcoming of all with no preferred seating, no firsts and no lasts, and no corners for the least of these. We yearn, God of the rainbow, for a new way of living and relating, as neighbors, not strangers, as brothers and sisters, not them and us. We yearn to live, fully celebrating both the diversity of our human family and the unity of our call to love and justice. We hunger, God of abundant life, for lives that have meaning and integrity, and for relationships grounded in mutuality and respect. We thirst for places to bring our doubts, our fears, places to express honestly who we are. We thirst for hope and encouragement as we struggle to follow Jesus in the way of life-risking love. With the gift of your grace, we are nourished. With the promise of your presence, may we be strengthened to be faithful. Amen. Let us be mindful of our connection with the divine and one another as we pray. The journey set before us may begin with a single step, but the closer we look and the farther we travel, we begin to recognize, to see prints from others along the path. Some come straight across from the left and the right. Others fall in line with ours, pointing ahead. Footprints come toward us, angle away, following unseen lines. We see not just the prints from shoes and bare feet, but also from crutch tips, wheels, and walkers, journeying all to a place where the divine, where faith leads. The footfalls of our journey sometimes follow a road, and at other times make a new road where it's needed. May our hearts, minds, and spirits open as we take our first step, 1,000th step, and 1,000,000th step, following and creating roads with each other as companions for hope and healing in the world. Let it be so. Amen.
How long, O Lord, will you forget me? How long, O Lord, will you look the other way? How long, O Lord? How long, O Lord, will you forget me? How long, O Lord, will you look the other way? How long, O Lord, must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have such sorrow in my heart? Look on me and answer, O God Creator. Bring hope to my nighttime before they see me fall. How long, O Lord, will you forget me? How long, O Lord, will you look the other way? How long, O Lord, must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have such sorrow in my heart? Look on me and answer, O God Creator. Bring hope to my nighttime before they see me fall. Look on me and answer, O God Creator. Bring hope to my nighttime before they see me fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. Yes, my heart will rejoice. Still I sing of your unfailing love. You have been good, but I trust in your unfailing love. Yes, my heart will rejoice. Still I sing of your unfailing love. You have been good. You will be good to me.
Greetings. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join the Phillips community during this week of the D-Men cohorts gathering. I will be with you for 2 days. Today, we're going to talk about what it is to be on a long road that seemingly has no turning point, and tomorrow, we're going to talk about what it is to have work to do. I begin in the book of Luke, 13th chapter, verses 10 through 17. I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, ought not she be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he heard this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. The title for this sermon comes from something that my mother told me that her mother, my grandmother, used to say. When a change would finally happen in my life or someone else's life, from time to time, both of them would say, "It's a long road that has no turning." My mother has been reminding me of her mother's words for years, and it was only recently that I began to hear grandma's words differently. I used to think that my mother and grandmother were saying it as a course correction, telling me to shift, that maybe I had been doing something wrong. But more recently, as my mother has coached me from the sidelines of my adult life, I hear their words striking me not as a warning, but rather as an observation, a declaration, an affirmation, and even a celebration that I had finally learned how to walk the long roads of life with God. And as much as I recognize this as a celebration, the truth of the matter is that some of these roads have been and continue to be filled with personal and communal anguish over injustice. And there are also the desert-like stretches of unanswered prayers and the thunder of weeping communities and my own empty wonderings of, "God, I know we're walking together, but have you forgotten? Have you forgotten me?" I have my grandmother's wisdom in the back of my throat as I approach this text that asks us to consider the possibility of change. The first thing I want to address is that 18 years is a long time to be dealing with something. 18 years is a long time for a community to be dealing with something. How long will it be, and how much more can our hearts take, God, for those of us who believe in you, for you to act and to change this 18-year situation? How much longer will Black mothers and Black daddies have to hold their breath all day long, hoping that their children will not only make it back home at the end of the school day, but make it back home whole, aware, and equipped as they deal with educational systems that are impacted by governmental policies that seek to stymie their capacity or their teachers' ability to strengthen their capacity, to evaluate whether or not the knowledge and experiences that they are encountering mean them well. I'm talking about the siege against critical race theory. How much longer will children of color, not just black babies, but children of color, have to work through what it means to be in black and brown and yellow and tan and red bodies without being equipped with resources and skills and strategies for discerning that the pain that they are experiencing as being othered and the tragedy that their communities are being experiencing by being marginalized, that there's a way to see how that happens, that there's a way to think about so to help them identify what it is that is besetting those communities and then strategize a way out. How long, Lord, will children of color come home with slumped shoulders and their parents and guardians have to lift up their chins and square their shoulders and tell them that they are powerful and brilliant regardless of the fact that they are in educational systems that want to refuse them the ability to discern what may have them to slump their shoulders over that's deeply related to race. How long, oh Lord, also will white parents also be ill-equipped with tools and strategies to help them form children that can discern for themselves when racism has become a part of their formation, but they don't want to continue on that long road anymore? How long, Lord, will politics have its way with our educational systems in ways that leave the children and the parents ill-equipped to push against racism so that the children's minds can flourish because the children's bodies have been regarded as unique, full of color, able, and active agents in this world? How long, Lord? How long and how much road is left as we as a nation continue to implode every day with the news of one more mass shooting somewhere, while we're at the same time working through grieving and mourning the most recent murder? The still fresh memory of the most recent mass shooting. How many more vigils and memorials and marches for folks taking too long over nothing will there be? That's too much, God, and it's happened for too long. Lord, where is the turning point for communities who, because of how violent and violating capitalism and settler colonialism have decimated native lands, leaving many of them to live through the legacy of what it is to try to strive and survive without ever having had a bank account, or ever having had safe access to water, or ever having had reliable access to quality food, healthcare, education, and employment, and their own traditions? Too much desolation for too long. How long, Lord? How long? How many more times will folks in ministry, I'm talking to you all right now, how many more times, how long, Lord, will folks in ministry be called to bury the dead, tend to the ill, weep with the mourning, and console the disconsolate without a break, because they can barely get the taste of the most recent emergency that they've been called to serve in? How much more can they take without a break and without the support that they need, without a breath, Lord? How many more times will they wake up with the memory of all they've seen and endured over the last 16 COVID months that are still fresh in their mind? And as the anniversaries continue to roll forward, how much more can they take in this 18-year season? Lord, how much longer on this road will we be where unaddressed grief turns inward and then billows outward in fits of rage in this world that is short on time and civility, yet long on joy over other people's pain? How much longer, Lord, will we exist in a society where love has become an empty phrase and where integrity somehow becomes unnecessary, where time is always fleeting, there's never enough time, when our bodies are under-resourced and often not our own, when death comes swift and early, when hope seems woefully inadequate to help us grapple with the 18-year seasons in our individual and collective communal lives? We've got to be honest as people of faith and make the truthful exclamation, God, this is too much for too long. Where is the turning point? And in the middle of our where and how much longer and it's too much and the maddening frustration, we encounter a woman. A woman who I imagine was just as human as you and I, showing up in the synagogue, bent over, only able to see up from the bottom, spine bent, contorted and twisting for 18 years. Here she comes on the screen. And there it is. On the screen of our imagination, we see her showing up in the house of God. She shows up with her malady and questions and sorrow and anguish and thin but strong line of faith. She shows up for healing. She shows up for her change. And Jesus sees her and heals her regardless. Regardless of if she thought it was too long, regardless of people who said you can't heal her, even though she's been dealing with this for too long and she finally made it here and she's asking for healing, but because it's the Sunday or the Sabbath day, you're not supposed to heal her. Regardless of all of that, Jesus heals her. And he heals her because he knows who he is. This woman shows up for healing from the prophetic healer whose first public declaration was to let people know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Out of this clarity around his identity and purpose, he knows that it's time for healing. And thus, here is a point not to miss in this text. When it is time for your healing, God is not concerned with protocol or the looks of things. Jesus has been sent by God to release humanity, including this woman, from the burdens that we often lay on one another. For this woman, the release was from an affliction that had her bent over with too much for too long, and it happened out of order on the Sabbath when no one is supposed to work. So in my mind, he has healed her from the affliction and also the society that had not prioritized healing and cure of the affliction. Jesus, in his commitment to healing, tightens up the leaders of the synagogue by helping them notice that their interpretation of the law has them more willing to bring relief to the beasts that carry the burdens than to bring it to a human being who has been carrying the burden of too much for too long, all because the law says not to. Essentially, he's saying, y'all got your mind on the wrong thing. Jesus points out the disparity and goes on about his healing business, which brings the woman upright and closer to God. She begins to worship God immediately after her healing. The minute she stands up is the minute she lifts up her praise to God. And there's an instructive word for us bent over folk. I count you and I amongst the bent over folk. There's an instructive word here for us bent over folk who are out here trying. If we believe in the meaning of Christ's life and ministry, we ought to be attuned to what's got and continues to keep folk unjustly bent over, and then be willing to be an agent in their healing and restoration. That's if we believe in the meaning of Christ and what that call means for our lives. Jesus loved the people enough to break the rules that keep them from experiencing the compassionate love of God through healing from the afflictions that separate them from community. We ought to be agents of God's healing because we value life and we are not afraid of getting our hands dirty by working with people in the hard parts of their long roads. And we cannot be afraid to do what's necessary when it comes to systems that would further bind them. Sometimes the long road has no turning point because we haven't been willing to make a course correction to remove the barriers to wholeness in people's lives. The third and final thing that I must admit jammed me up, but then set me free, happens in verse 16. And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day? Here he's talking to the leaders in the synagogue, who he's having a school about what it takes to bring people to God. He makes it clear in his conversation with them that it was Satan that had bent her over. But look here, go back up to verse 12. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up and began praising God. When it's time for the long road to meet its turning point for your betterment, God is interested in your freedom, not in calling you by your affliction. He says to her, "Woman," and I do wish they had captured her name. "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When it's time for the road to turn, that's it. It's over. It can come in the blink of an eye. You are no longer held captive when the word of freedom comes. You are no longer held captive and bent down and looking up at the world around you and called by what held you bound. When it's over, God is not calling you by your last pain or your last misgiving or your last fear or your last whatever. God knows who you are in the middle of your malady, in the middle of your 18-year situation, and doesn't see you through the lenses of how a struggle might deform you and your behavior. God created, sees, and knows your heart and means you well, and is willing to do what it takes for you to begin to see yourself in the way that God sees you. Yep, there's no way around it. There are long roads with too much for too long, some of which we may have actively put ourselves on, and other roads which we may have found ourselves born into. But there are turning points. The best part of this text for me, as I look at what I can do while I'm on a long road stretch and while I'm walking with folks who are on a long road stretch, is this. The woman kept getting up. She kept walking around. Though she may have been bent and twisted, she stayed in the game of life. Keep showing up, folks. Keep showing up. That's the word. Keep showing up. Be willing to show up for your healing and for your community's healing, even if it's on the wrong day. Even if there's a rule that says you shouldn't come on this day, come and speak on behalf of the people on this day. And come and use those special kind of educated words so we'll be willing to hear you on this day. Only on certain circumstances, says the people, will we permit the healing. But God is not concerned with the conditions of the people when it's time for the change and the healing to happen. We don't have to be concerned. When it's time, it's time. That's it. When it's time for the long road to meet its turning point, that's it. I hope that is a word of encouragement to somebody on today. As you are either walking a long road that seems to have no turning point, or walking alongside of somebody who needs a word of encouragement, just keep showing up. In so much as there is air in your lungs, there is possibility for a change. What that change will look like, I cannot say. That is not my business to say. That is only God's business between you and those who are going to be transformed. But what I can say for sure is that even on the long roads, you are not alone. Even on the long roads, God has not forgotten you. Even on the long roads, at some point, as sure as this earth is not flat, but yet round, even on the long roads, there will be a turning point. God will show you that you have not been alone, and that God is committed to doing whatever it takes, at whatever time, in whatever space, and whatever way. God will cut through the mess to bring you to your betterment, so that you can begin to see yourself as God sees you, not by what you've been. I offer these words as an encouragement, hoping that they have pricked through the dust of the long road, that you may have found yourself unalone, and that you may find healing on the road that somewhere will have a turning point. Tomorrow, we'll gather and we'll talk about work to do. I feel like I might bring a little Isley Brothers in here. Remember the song? I got work to do. I got a job. Oh, I got work to do. See you tomorrow.